Do you want to hear what the secret of Jewish wealth is? Do you want to be rich? Listen to this video. Look, our sages say in our holy Torah, whoever wants to become wealthy should give the tithe. Basically, the tithe, in very general terms, you have to study it in depth. But broadly speaking, if a person earns 100, they have to give 10 out of 100. 10%. Now, our sages in the tractate of Avot of our patriarchs say that a safeguard for wealth is the tithe. That is, the Jew who gives the tithe becomes wealthy. That is a divine promise. Now, something very important to know is how to give the tithe. First, the person to whom you give the tithe. The person has to be in need, obviously, and the person to whom you give the tithe must be someone with impeccable personal qualities. Someone honest, someone you know for sure is an honest person who will use that money for a good purpose. That's essential because giving money to someone dishonest obviously does not fulfill the divine precept of giving tzedakah, as it is called in Hebrew, which would be social justice, or more simply, giving charity. Now, it is very important to know that there are very detailed laws and very high levels of how to give charity or tzedakah, social justice, according to Hebrew. There are 8 levels of charity. The highest level of charity is, for example, someone you see who has become impoverished or is becoming impoverished. They're not begging yet, they're not asking for charity, but you can tell that person, for example, is declining economically, financially. For example, maybe their clothes aren't like they used to be, a bit worn out, or maybe they had to sell some belongings they had. Basically, you can tell that this person is becoming poorer. In this case, it's very important to help so that they don't completely fall financially and economically. And in parentheses, let me tell you that it's also important that they don't fall emotionally, because someone who becomes poorer, obviously emotionally as well, very likely, unfortunately, they can also fall emotionally. Therefore, you have to help them. What does it mean to help them? For example, giving them a loan so that person can recover. For example, if they own a business, provide a loan so they can buy merchandise or hire help. Basically, not allowing them to fall economically. Another way is, for example, if they don't have a job, to recruit them to your own job or get them a job that has to do with the qualities that this person has. That is, help them get out of that financial mess. I'm going to list some of the rankings, as they say, list the levels of charity. That's very important. Giving charity anonymously is especially important as it's considered a higher form of charity. It's giving charity without the person who receives knowing who it's from and without the person who gives knowing who they're giving to. For example, there's a charity fund that is ethically impeccable. The people who manage that fund are excellent, honest, for sure that's the case. So you give that money to that charity fund. Therefore, you don't know who receives that money. But you know that money goes to people who really need it, and the people who receive that money don't know who it's from. Therefore, they don't feel ashamed when they see you on the street, for example. There's something very interesting in the laws about when you, for instance, give a loan. For example, if you give a loan and the person giving the loan knows that the other person can't pay it back, you should try to avoid that person. That is, for example, if the person is walking toward me, obviously you have to greet them or say hello, of course. But if there's a chance that person doesn't see you so they don't feel embarrassed, you should try to avoid them. Do you understand? Don't avoid them if they see you. If you see them, greet them or they'll think you're offended, which isn't good. But if the person didn't see you coming and you see them from afar, for example, then you can say, okay, I'll go this way to enter this place. He won't see me, so if he does see me, won't he feel the need to pay me back quickly? That's very important. How does God take care of even the smallest detail of a person's honor so that they are not embarrassed? That's something very elevated, another very high level of charity, but it's a little bit lower. It's when the giver knows who they're giving the money to, but the receiver doesn't know who they're receiving it from. For example, our sages. In the past, for example, there was a custom, for example, that when there were people in need, they gave money behind their back, not knowing who received it, but the recipient knew who the wise man was who gave him the money, but the wise man didn't know who received it. It's a very high level, basically. It's giving without knowing the recipient. Then, another level, a bit less elevated, is when both the giver and the receiver know who each other are. For example, there's a poor person, someone in need who needs money. You go and give them the money. Both know who gave and who received the money. Obviously, a level that is also less elevated is, for example, giving money. But maybe, for example, if the person was rich and became poor, giving money, but not in the amount that honors that person who used to be rich. Maybe the person who gives doesn't have that money doesn't have, a lot of money to give them. But it would be right, if one can, not to give just a few cents, but to give a monetary amount that honors the person who became poor. Previously, they were wealthy too. When giving charity, it's important to offer kind or encouraging words like saying, God willing, will you return with new strength to the economic level you were at before? I trust in God, I will help you. That is, give words of encouragement and give it with a smile. Our sages say that when someone gives charity and gives blessings, they receive blessings from heaven. And the lowest level is to give charity, but something minimal and maybe with a face that isn't smiling, to give it reluctantly. It's charity since the person helped someone in need, but it's clearly a lower level than what we discussed earlier, because he didn't give it with a joyful heart and didn't motivate that person, didn't encourage them. Giving is important and valid, but we must recognize there are higher levels. We have to aspire to be on the podium of the higher levels that we mentioned at the beginning. And this is what our Holy Torah says, which enriches a person, that is, the person who gives the tithe becomes enriched. It's important to strengthen ourselves in that, because our sages say that the one who has rachamim, which in Hebrew means mercy, God shows mercy to those who show mercy to others. It's important when we act kindly, God blesses us from above. So God willing, may we always have that merit. Be attentive, perceive if there is someone who is close to us or maybe far from us who needs something. And not wait. Don't wait for the person in need to ask. Don't wait for the person in need to ask. Instead, you should give them the money before they ask. Give and try to do it as delicately as possible to protect the honor of the person in need. And this is very important for our good qualities, both on a personal level and on a community level. May we always have the merit to be able to give. And if we receive, it is in order to give. Everything that God, everything the chef. That's how we came to the point. All the abundance that God gives us, may we have the merit to be like a very clean and transparent conduit, so we can always give with great joy and a full heart to the whole world. Many blessings.